Have you ever had to deal with that where people somehow minimize or you minimize in your mind what it is that you do because you're married to the Steelers head coach?
We had won the Super Bowl, and it was a little bit after that, and he was getting up and going to work, crack of dawn like normal. And I remember I had just spent so much time being miserable, and I didn't know why. And I was just not a nice person. And I realized that it really was because I felt like I had become an appendage to history. I created this sweatshirt dress for myself. I wore it every day like a uniform, and people would stop me on the street and ask me where I got my dress. And so enough people stopped me that I thought, maybe there's some people that might like this dress. And so that's how the business started.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Candy Valentino Show. Thanks for tuning in with me today, and you are in for a treat. You guys know that we've been doing different formats on the show as we've got into different seasons, and we are kicking off this season with a really great interview with an entrepreneur that I can't wait for you to meet. Kiya Tomlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been excited, looking forward to this.
Me
Actually, very excited.
Oh, yay! I love it. I will have to get you the planner. The planner is launching in like days, so we'll get you
Oh,
the planner.
awesome.
But thanks for coming on. I love your story. Obviously, we have something in common. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. My fans know that. And so when I was talking with my sister-in-law, you were on her show, and I was like, wait a second, I have to meet this badass entrepreneur. So super excited for this conversation. When did you first start your clothing line?
So I was actually a custom designer for a number of
Oh,
years,
okay.
doing mainly bridal, mother of the groom, red carpet, that type of stuff.
Oh,
And
fun.
I started the ready-to-wear collection in 2014, and really it really was just for myself. It was once I moved out of my home and into a space where I could meet clients without having to travel to their home or having to come to my studio space at home. Realized I needed to get dressed and be presentable. But I also had little kids that my life centered around raising my family, and the custom design was really just something I did on the side for, a sense of accomplishment, little pin money, or, just for fun. And so I wanted to find something that I could wear easily during the day, because when I worked from home, I would sew in my sweats and my workout clothes, just, looking a hot mess. Pajamas didn't matter. But then once I moved to the outside world, I had to wear real stuff. And so I decided to design a sweatshirt dress just for myself so that I could be not first and foremost comfortable with the type of work I was doing, which was very active, climbing on top of cutting tables, scooching around the floor, but also presentable for clients. So I looked professional, and I needed it to be, mobile and flexible because I was running, still raising my family. So soccer games, grocery stores, just all of that kind of stuff. And then easy to care for. I didn't want to have to mess with dry clean stuff. I wanted to be able to throw it in the washing machine at the end of the day. And so I created this sweatshirt dress for myself. I wore it every day like a uniform. And people would stop me on the street and ask me where I got my dress. And so enough people stopped me that I thought, maybe there's some people that might like this dress. And so that's how the business started.
Wow, that's so cool. So really it's like you saw a need, everyone's asking you about it. So you're like, okay, let's see if I can pivot into that. And I
Yes.
think what happens oftentimes is people will get that feedback like, oh, I love this, or where can I get that? But they don't take the next steps to create it and let alone figure out how to monetize it and acquire customers. So from that moment where you're like, okay, maybe more people want my sweatshirt dress, where did you go next? Like, did you literally say, okay, I'm going to start manufacturing this and selling it? Did you do it boutique-y, kind of like on the side? Like, what was the path?
The path was a hot mess is what it was.
Isn't it always?
So I knew that I didn't want to make the dress myself. I, was kind of snobbish and was like, no, I do couture evening wear. I'm not making a sweatshirt dress like a sweatshop. And so I spent about a year learning to work with a factory. I have no fashion aside from just sewing since I was a little girl. I've never worked in the fashion industry. I don't know anything about it. And so I spent about a year trying to figure out how you work with a factory, how you manufacture, what do I need to do? And had this dress made. And of course, when you work with a factory, they don't want to make 3 dresses. You have to make a lot of dresses. And so after I made a lot of dresses, then I kind of had to figure out like, oh crap, how do I get rid of these? I can't sell all of these just to my custom clients that come in the door. And so then it was like, okay, how do I get into wholesaling? And so just learning that path of wholesaling. And then it went into direct to customer online as the apparel industry started making ground online. Previously, people were leery, especially in my target market, leery of buying clothing online. They want to try it on, they want to feel it, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, so then figuring out how to do it that way.
So figuring out wholesale, right? So you started
Mhm.
to think wholesale, and then you also did D2C on your own site or your own
So
to your.
yes, but that really came as a kind of a redirection. We were wholesaling and we were in a number of accounts across the country, and we had just landed some accounts in Europe, which we were really excited about. Not a lot, but it was kind of cool to say, like, we were international. So
Yeah.
we were proud of that. And just after we landed those accounts, all of our stuff is made here in the United States at that time. Our fabric was being knit for us, especially in LA. It was a special content
Cool.
blend that we use. And the mill called and said one of their knitting machines was broken. And it's not an easy fix, I guess, these big, huge knitting machines. And so they weren't able to finish our fabric order, which meant we weren't able to send it to the factory to get our orders off in time that, we could keep those accounts. So what I did was I called the mill and I said, whatever fabric is done, send it to me. And I leased a little warehouse space in, a less than desirable area of town. And at that time, I had one full-time employee who was a recent college graduate, majored in fashion design, so she knew how to sew. And then I hired some part-time Art Institute design students. We used to have a fashion design school here in town. We don't anymore, but I hired about 3 of those part-time, and together we were able to sew ourselves the orders that needed to go overseas. And so we got those off, but we were never able to circle back and fulfill the United States orders. And when you don't deliver on your orders, they cancel your accounts and they don't want to do business with you anymore. So we lost all of our wholesale accounts. And so that's when we had to kind of transition to stay afloat into direct to customer online. And that's also when we started making that stuff in-house.
I love that. So it's like, okay, here's a problem, right? You
Mhm.
lose all these accounts, but you don't quit. You just decide to pivot into a different direction. And how do we just send this to the consumer? And now to the person listening or watching right now, and because I'm literally thinking of 3 or 4 people off the top of my head that I know are avid listeners and are in like our event circle and stuff. They have a product. It's a great product. They have proof of concept. They have customers. They just don't know how to sell it to more customers. So now that you had this concept, now that you're getting up to D2C, you're starting to sell it outside of wholesale. How did you start to attract more people to know about what that product was and how to get it into their hands?
I mean, I definitely think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where a lot of creative people struggle and go wrong. We get so caught up in the hobby of it and the love and, our love for it, to kind of think about what people really want and what are we providing. So, I mean, to me, that's just the constant struggle of getting more customers and getting my brand out there. And it really is, for me, it's about listening to the people that like the product. So my
Mhm.
customers that currently like my product, why do they like it? Who are they? What do they do? What are they using it for? And then going out and finding other people like them. So direct to customer, one thing I did was I looked on my, database, and I picked out the top 30 customers that have spent the most. And then I kind of Google, LinkedIn, searched them, and I could see, like, oh, okay, she's a dentist, she's a realtor, she's a this. And there was some overlap. Like, we found we've got a decent number of realtors,
Mm.
we have a decent number of doctors, dentists, like that type of professional, entrepreneurs. Surprisingly, we didn't have a lot of teachers, which I was like, oh, because I know teachers have said they like this, but we realize we're not in the price point for teachers. They might like it, but it's more expensive than they want to afford to buy their clothes. So then how do I position myself? How do I find more of those doctors? How do
Yeah.
I find more of those realtors? And so, we did recently, we did an in-house private event with UPMC doctors, hospitals, and it was a charitable event. A portion of the proceeds of the sales went to what they were raising money to, but we got those doctors in the door because we have found that doctors like our stuff. So then, once we introduced them to the brand and very inexpensively, on our end, then, they'll come back, they'll spread the word, they'll wear it to work and tell their other doctor friends. So just really trying to get creative and do the research on the back end.
It's brilliant. And I don't know if you have actually read any of the 9% Edge, but exactly what you just talked about is the one thing that we talk about in the sniper strategies. It's like find the customers that spend
Hmm.
the most. And then how do you just go find more of them, right? Because
Hmm.
that's going to be cheaper than trying to go really
Yes.
wide with customer acquisition and trying to bring all those people and then see if they're even your people. So I love that you did that early on. And how did that, because obviously we're talking, are we up to about like 2016 or so of the story prior to you?
So 2016 was, yeah, that's about when we kind of fell apart wholesale wise. And we kind of started our own little mini scrappy factory
Yeah,
selling
so
direct to
you
customer.
start that, right? And then obviously what it is today with you being able to get NFL licenses and
Mm.
all of the teams. I mean, that what exactly transitioned, if you could summarize it, and if you could speak to how did you have to elevate your own mindset and your own level of leadership to go from this scrappy spot where you're just trying to figure it out to now
Mhm.
you're like an actual legit brand, and now you're partnering with, one of the largest organizations in the country. So what does that look like, and how did you have to evolve in order to allow that to even come in?
Yeah, first off, it was definitely just listening to what people want.
Mhm.
If people are asking for it, how many people are asking for it? Is there really enough people asking for it? So that's really how we even got into the sportswear line is when I opened my store, people would come and want to know, like, we're in Pittsburgh, so it's kind of crazy, Steeler country here. People would come in and be like, well, where's the Steeler stuff? Don't you sell Steeler stuff? Where are the Steeler designs? And I just was so confused. I'm like, no, I don't sell Steeler stuff. Go to the mall. There's like a ton of that crap, like anywhere else. You can go anywhere and get it and find it. But then I started to think about why they were asking and why, I looked at myself and I don't, I'm married to a football coach. We coached for a number of teams and I've never worn team apparel. Why is that? And it's because I didn't like it. It
Mhm.
wasn't, I'm into fashion. It wasn't my fashion sense. Started thinking like, well, maybe that's why women are asking me. They're seeing what I'm doing with my regular brand, and why am I not offering fashionable stuff in the sports arena? And so I was like, well, maybe if I designed something that I would wear, maybe there are more women out there that that's what they're looking for as well, similar to the sweatshirt dress. And so I started that and it turned into a huge hit, to the fact that I was kind of starting to get a little nervous about like, trademark infringement. And I kind of just
Yeah.
wanted to stay away from that whole thing. And so when we started having customers from fans of other teams asking us to do the, styles for them in their colors, initially we kind of we're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just purple, whatever. But then I started to get a little nervous about that trademark stuff. So I reached out to the NFL, to see if, what does licensing entail? And it was not an instant or easy road at all. They were very uninterested to start with. I will say that my one advantage was that I had worked in Pittsburgh, we do a big charity fashion show, that the Steelers put on, that raises a lot of money for
Yeah.
the concussion program and cancer cares and stuff. And so I had worked with the NFL prior to that, just for dealing with fashion show stuff. I had been given like a temporary permission to create like evening gowns with, Steeler logos on it and that kind of stuff. So it was beneficial in that I knew who to talk to at the Steelers. And so or at the NFL, excuse me, at the league office. So I reached out to them and just, inquired and kept inquiring and kept, just kind of stayed on the radar. And it really wasn't until COVID that when there was a lot of support for small businesses and diverse businesses, that if you remember, there's a lot of social justice stuff going on at the time as
Yeah.
well, that they started to be interested in, some more smaller, diverse brands doing unique things. Like if you could bring something unique to the table that the big licensees weren't doing, they were doing, the big licensees do t-shirts, they do hoodies, what
Yeah.
are we doing that's different? That's when they were like, okay, let's talk. And so that's how that became. But I will say to your question about what transpired within myself was really just kind of getting over the self-doubt and just believing that like I deserved and belong to be here. I'm doing something unique and creative and people like it and they want it. And you know, give it a try and what's the worst that can happen? And so that really was kind of the, I guess the push.
Sage advice as well, right? It's like, get over your own limiting beliefs. What's the worst that can
Yes.
happen? Love that you shared that
Hmm.
that wasn't one phone call, that it took, it sounds like a couple years
Oh yeah.
of
Oh
being
yeah. It
able
took a
to.
few years.
Okay, so that's because otherwise you were like, okay, it's Coach Tomlin's wife. Of course, you made one phone call and they say, okay, sure, you can do it. But that wasn't the case, right?
Oh no, no, they kept telling me no.
And is that
And it might have
something?
been because I'm Coach Tomlin's wife. I don't
That's
know.
true. Yeah, you're right. You never know. Is that something that you've had to deal with? Like, is there, as a female and paving your own path, having your own business, having your own thing that lights you up, that's successful, have you ever had to deal with that, whether it's self-belief or from others, where people somehow minimize or you minimize in your mind what it is that you do because you're married to the Steelers head coach?
There's a little bit of that, but I would say probably more so for my case was my parents divorced when I was little and I was raised by my single mom. She was a college professor, but like they weren't paying much. And so she would take on, you know, midnight shift jobs just to make ends meet. You know, she worked UPS midnight shift, Dunkin' Donuts. She worked a plastic factory doing, you know, inspection in the middle of the night. And I just, from that time on, I always just knew that I wanted to work. I needed to work. I needed to be able to support myself because I would look at my friends' moms who were, you know, I used to just be like, that's what I want to be. I want to be an at-home mom. I want an at-home mom. I want to be an at-home mom. I want them to bring cupcakes, you know, to school for my birthday and be room mom and all that stuff. And I would think back to like, if something happened in that marriage, that woman would not be able to support her and her kids, or she'd be stuck in an undesirable situation. And so I always knew that that's what I wanted to be capable of, whether I needed to or not. So fortunately, I haven't needed to yet, but what I did need is I needed to feel capable
Hmm.
of doing that. And so that's the driving force for me. And there was a time because Mike and I got married young, and then you know we started having kids. It was I remember like the exact morning. It was we had won the Super Bowl and it was a little bit after that, and he was getting up and going to work, you know, at the crack of dawn like normal. And I remember I had just spent so much time being miserable, and I didn't know why. And I was just bitchy, and I was judgmental, and I was just not a nice person. And I realized that it really was because I felt like I had become an appendage to his dream, and I didn't have something of my own that I loved. And, you know, I would go to events and, you know, he would get whisked away to sign autographs or talk or do whatever. And I'd be stuffing my face at the buffet table. And the people that did come up to me just wanted to talk about my husband. And
Hmm.
and I knew that like growing up, I always had things that I wanted to do and dreams that I wanted to do. And you know, because of his career and honestly, to be honest, because of my own self-doubt, I
Hmm.
didn't pursue those and instead just kind of sacrificed in quotes, sacrificed my what I wanted to do to allow him to, you know, follow his dream. And
Hmm.
so yeah, that's probably mostly what I struggled with. But then, you know, it's also the same, I'm sure a lot of people and women primarily, I think, unfortunately, I think we do struggle with a lot of self-doubt. I'm 50, so I was raised at the time where kids or girls especially are supposed to be seen and not heard. We're supposed to be polite and you know follow the rules, unlike the boys who are able to just be wild and crazy and break things and experiment and you know fast and furious. And so it did take me a long time to kind of realize that and to realize that being polished and pretty is not going to get me anywhere except sitting there looking polished and pretty.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And there was so much in there. I think anyone pause and rewind that because I think there was a lot of value in what you just shared. It was really brilliant of how you had to, again, kind of overcome your own self-doubt and really understand your identity, like who you
Mhm.
are in the world outside of a marriage, outside of being a mom, outside of all these other things. And so it's so good. I think some people don't have the self-realization and the self-awareness that you did to say like, why am I miserable when maybe society thinks I have it all, right?
Mhm.
And really to be able to do the work to get through it and then actually do something about it, which you've
Mhm.
obviously done. So we get into the point where now you finally are knocking on the NFL's door for years. They finally say, okay, COVID. Do you start automatically with all of the teams? Like, what does that look like? Because from my mind, I'm thinking it's one thing to have a small area that you're producing products, but now you have to all of a sudden scale. There's a lot of issues that can come in that. Was there any issues that came as you were scaling up? And what were some of the things you had to repivot and work through?
Yeah, so fortunately, I think I was one of the first small businesses that they kind of took in to start this. So it was a little experimental. And they were very gracious in allowing me time to kind of ramp up. So the first year of the license, I was supposed to start with, like I said, 10 teams. And at the last minute, they were like, okay, wait, you know what? Let's just start with the Steelers. And I was like, okay, so we'll start with the Steelers. Now, I will say that was a little bit, it sounds like that would have been a relief, but in terms of production in factory, now I have to make but so many styles just for the factory to take me. So now I've got this exorbitant amount of Steeler stuff when I had planned on making 10 teams out of that, kind of minimum order. So we had this ton of Steeler stuff that we have to figure out how to sell. But it did allow us to kind of just manage one team and one set of colorways. Then the next year we added on 9 teams to get to a total of 10 teams. Then the following year we added on 11. And then this year we added on the final 11. So this is our first season at 32 teams. It is very hard to manage the 32 teams with, especially first off, our aesthetic is a lot of color blocking for the most part. So color blocking is when you have actual colored pieces of fabric. So it's not like we print black t-shirts and slap a screen print of the team on there. We have to buy the fabric colors for all 32 teams and 2 colors for all 32 teams. Fortunately, some of them overlap, so we can kind of bundle them together. They're like, for example, there's like maybe 5 or 6 teams that use that Steelers gold fabric as, if not a main color, a secondary color kind of thing, but keeping that all organized. So the second year when we added the 10 teams and we outsourced it to a factory, it was such a nightmare to communicate with the factory about all these different colors, especially since most of their seamstresses probably don't even follow football, could care less. They have no concept of the colorways. So it was just very confusing and a lot of communication. And so we decided to bring it in-house to our little makeshift factory and do it in-house where we could control the colorways, but also not only control the colorways, because one thing we had discovered when we had our big mill incident and we had to start making stuff in-house is we liked that. I say we, it was like 2 of us. We, me and my one assistant,
Yeah.
we like that we had control over what we were producing. If something wasn't selling well, we would just stop making it and set that fabric aside, reallocate it to another design. We didn't have to make 5,000 of something to then realize like, oh, nobody likes this. Now what do? We just wasted all that money. So it was really helpful to do the NFL collection that way because I have to buy a certain amount of, say, Seattle Seahawks lime green.
Mhm.
Um, if Seattle Seahawks are not having a good season, no one is buying that stuff. And so by doing it in-house, it allows me to stop producing Seattle Seahawks green, hold that fabric till next season and use it then, as opposed to if I'm working with a factory, man, they've already made, 3,000 Seattle Seahawks green whatevers that are not going to sell because they're not having a good season. I actually don't know if they're having a good season this year or not. Just
I
use
don't either.
for the sake of the lime green color.
Yeah. For
So,
any Seattle Seahawks fans that are like, they're having a great year.
yeah, yeah.
We don't know. We
I
don't
seriously don't know.
know.
So yeah, so that was a lot of that was logistically, that's the complication. And then additionally, on top of that is the marketing. So now I'm marketing to 32 different team
Yeah.
customers
Yeah.
and trying to understand that, as well as when I went into the NFL collection, when I first started, the customers for the most part that were asking me were my own customers. So I was thinking, okay, it's the same target base. Like
Mhm.
it's my woman that buys it's my doctor, now she wants to buy an NFL thing that she can wear to the suites or to the, on Friday Steeler game day or whatever. And when I launched, I realized like it was a lot less of them than I expected because they may not be super football fans. They, buy one poncho and they're good for the next 3 years. They're just gonna wear that poncho every time they go to the game.
Yeah.
It was the rabid fans that wanted it, but the rabid fans are for the most part in a different target market, like a different price point, and they're used to the $25 t-shirts and the $28 hoodies, and that's not what I'm selling. So even
Right.
though they liked it, they were angry, and boy,
Mm.
they let us hear it. So then like trying to figure out the messaging. So either I cave and start making cheap stuff that's already out there,
Mhm.
or I have to get stronger about my messaging and not get my feelings hurt when people are trashing the brand, and just understanding like, I'm sorry, they're just not our customer. Like, do you call Louis Vuitton and, complain and yell at them because their handbags are $3,000? No, you just move on and go to TJ Maxx or wherever you're going to find a knockoff. But to understand that, not take it personal, and to really kind of dig in and who is my customer? Where is that woman that's going to spend $150 on a sweatshirt, an NFL sweatshirt, and how to get to her?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And it's so true. As you were talking, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is probably a totally different market than what you had already established. And
Hmm.
then that's really hard because there's a little bit of that like learning process again,
Hmm.
where you have to go back through and go, where is this person?
Yes.
And with the 32 different areas, I guess if you're doing digital advertising, you can probably really
Hmm.
direct like specific images to that specific team and city, but you still
Hmm.
do it 32 times. What did you
Yeah.
find out was like your best customer acquisition strategy for the 32 different markets? Were you just trying to go all NFL, or did you eventually have to break it into 30 different strategies for each one of them?
We're doing all NFL just because I don't have the budget to break it down into
Mhm.
32 different teams. But it really is like, for example, there was a Thursday, and it was Amazon. I think Amazon Prime, I think, airs the Thursday night games, and I was lucky enough to get a little 20-second spot where they just kind of mentioned our brand, and that was the orders came pouring in, and we're like, well,
Amazing.
there they are. There are the
Amazing.
people. So yeah, we're definitely still trying to figure out, and digital marketing for the NFL collection works. Um, One thing I will say with the licensing with the NFL is that it is not, I have a lot of limitations put on by the NFL. For example, I can't sell to Dick's. I can't sell to Macy's. I can't sell. There's a lot of places I am not contractually capable of selling to. And so it does make it really tricky if I'm limited just to my own website and boutiques,
Mhm.
like kind of that tier of shopping. So it's not like, oh, you just need to get a Dick account with Dick's Sporting Goods. It is, yeah, there's a lot more into licensing if anybody's in licensing or interested in licensing that is, yeah, have to
I
navigate.
think that I think that's really cool because, right, somebody could be thinking, well, why aren't you in Dixon? Why aren't you here and all these other places? So for someone that is maybe trying to do licensing or think that it's some like simple cakewalk that you all of a sudden just get massive distribution when you get the license, explain how it works. Do you have to pay for them? Is there a percentage of
Yeah.
sales? Like break all of that down for someone that
Okay.
be interested or just intrigued in the process.
Yes. So the NFL is the only licensing that I have experience with. And so they give you what they call a guarantee. And so that means that I have to guarantee the NFL is going to get X amount of dollars. And that is determined by a royalty rate. So they'll say every item that I sell, the NFL gets X percentage of that. So all of my X percentages of everything I sell should add up to that guaranteed dollar amount that they gave me, of which I have to pay up front. So I pay that up front. And then if I sell nothing, then I just paid the NFL X thousands of dollars, to do
Yeah.
nothing. I just lost money. If I sell more than that, then I still have to keep paying them their 20%.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much how it works. But the issue comes in, and we learned this the hard way. We did after the, like after football season's over, there's definitely a drop in sales for NFL stuff.
Mhm.
So leading up to through the playoffs, leading up to the Super Bowl and after the Super Bowl, we're like, okay, this is going to be the last time that we're able to sell stuff for the NFL. Sales are going to dry up until next August. So let's
Mhm.
just, have like a sale and keep the orders coming. And so we did a great sale. And I remember like, oh man, we had a great month. I was all excited. And then when I met with my accountant, he was like, no, you actually lost money. And I was like, what? We did so well. And he was like, well, the NFL takes their percentage out, then you put it on sale, and then you spend this much on marketing to market
Mhm.
the sale. And so that's kind of where I realized like, oh, like the numbers are extremely important, and more so important in this scenario than they are in some of our other stuff. Like I just, with licensing, I don't really have the wiggle room. And so I have to be very conscious and thoughtful of that. And go back to our previous conversation about who my target market was and who wanted the product. I was like, okay, well, we'll have the sale. And so the people that want the product will get the product, and, they'll stop complaining about it and we'll sell it. And they did, but it cost us.
Yeah.
And we lost getting it to them. So
Expensive lessons. I can
yes,
in 26 years doing this, I've had them. And then it's like, that's how you learn, right? You're like, okay, let's
yes,
never do that again. It's
yeah,
like really
yep,
paying attention to the numbers. And is
yeah.
that something that came easy to you? Like paying attention to the numbers, looking at your profit margins, understanding all of that? Like, was that easy, or is that something that you had to develop along the way?
Oh my God, this is so frustrating to me. And I have to say, like, that is why I love your book. First of all, you are just so badass. And I was like so
Oh,
excited when I started reading the book. But it is like a textbook to entrepreneurs. And I wish I had had that years ago in just easy to understand, plain English, and just really like the bullet points. Like, it didn't go too far down any rabbit holes where it was just over my head. It was just like, these are the first things that you need to be looking for and need to be doing. So it was not easy for me. And I think for a lot of us creatives, we get, caught up in what we love to do and what we love to make and the hobby of it. And we either underestimate the importance of the business side of it, or we don't understand it. And so we avoid the business side of it. And I remember like I'm an average believer in coaching. I think it comes from, I was a gymnast that did gymnastics up through college. I'm married to a coach. Like I just believe in coaching in all areas. I always think about it like, as a gymnast, I wouldn't just start flipping in my backyard hoping to make it
yeah.
to, get a college scholarship. No, you get a coach. So I think of that in the same way as business. So I have business coaches, and I remember early on I would meet with people, and they would say, whether they were, a coach in a different area or just some conversation, and they would say, oh, you've got to know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. And I remember I would get so frustrated and irate, like not physically while they were there, but after. I'm like, what numbers are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, tell me the numbers. And I just felt like they would just say that because that's like, you just sound so smart, like, oh, you got to know
Yeah.
your numbers. And I'm
Yeah.
like, numbers, and I could not, for the like life of me, figure out what numbers they were talking about. Well, your book tells you all of, exactly what numbers you need to be paying attention to. So I definitely appreciate that. But yeah, it was not easy. And it really is something, even continually, that I have to really discipline myself to do, to sit down and really block out, okay, Tuesday morning, you're going to spend from 9 to 10, you're going to, pull out your spreadsheet, and these are the things you are looking at, and these are the things you're tracking. And initially, like, I was just looking at numbers, and like I didn't really know what they were doing. But over time, repetitively from doing it, I start to understand why I'm doing it and what they mean. And then you start to hear other, tidbits or pieces of advice or direction that, kind of correlate to the numbers and be like, oh, that's why I'm tracking that. Like, so for example, like average order value.
Mhm.
Now I can say, okay, well, I know for like years, I knew my average order value was $150. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. I just knew it was
Yeah.
$150. But now I've, years later have added some different products, done some different things, and I see that my average order value has gone down. And then So now it's like, okay, well, what do I do to get my average order value back up? Instead of always looking for new customers, because that's expensive to get new customers, here's another way to grow the business is look at my average order value and can I bundle it? Can I upsell it? Can I, what can I do to get back to $150 average order value? So yeah, so know your numbers, but like if you don't know what numbers to like know, like get the book.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're saying the AOV and how to increase it. I'm like, you're speaking my love language, talking about all this stuff. But it is frustrating, right? It would be like the same. I always say when people say like, oh, know your numbers. Well, if they don't tell you anything more, they probably don't even know what numbers need
Yeah,
measured.
that's what I felt like.
Yeah. And they probably didn't, right? It was just
Hmm.
the thing to say. But it would be like if you're like, hey, Candy, go sew this sweatshirt. I'd be like, okay, I'm game, but like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't have a clue. So it was like,
Hmm.
you need to tell me, like, okay, you're going to start here and then you're going to pay
Hmm.
attention to this. And then like, that's what's important about it. But I still wouldn't develop any skills in that if I
Hmm.
didn't do it. Right. So
Hmm.
it's like,
Right.
you can't just tell me how to sew. I actually need to sew in order to figure it out and to get any good at it. So that's
Right.
how numbers are, like taking that time, like you said, just blocking it out, even if it seems like it's French at first, like you don't know what you're
Hmm.
reading, then it's like doing it over and over again. So it's interesting that it didn't come natural to you, but now
Hmm.
you've been able to develop it and understand it, and it's going to continually help you to grow your business, understanding those KPIs and those
Yeah.
metrics.
I will say I'm still working at it. I'm not like,
Yeah.
I'm not coaching anybody else. I'm still just staying disciplined and trying to get better every day.
That's so good. So we've got up to the licensing. Obviously, that's 2020. You're figuring out how to get this. You're obviously, not just trying to acquire new customers, which I love because it costs 5 times more to acquire one
Mhm.
than it does to resell to an existing one or upsell them. So I love that you're focusing on that. What are some of the things that you're looking to do? We're now end of 2024, right? We've got a Super Bowl coming up in February-ish, right? So
Mhm.
you're still selling and
Mhm.
focusing. What's on your heart? What are you looking to create or do or expand the business in what way? Because now you've had this great opportunity, but it's like, okay, what do we do next?
Yeah, I'm just really, I'm still at a place where I'm trying to just get more fluid at it. And I just, we're really just constantly working overtime, like pants on fire. And so really trying to get some organization and systems in place so that it can run more smoothly so that I can take on other things or, right now, I'm like at the point right now that I don't even know that I could dream about what I want to do next because I see so many areas of improvement of where I am, where we are right now and where we want to get to before I can kind of take on something else. Um, I know like one thing we're working on if we want to continue with the NFL license, which, I reevaluate every contract
Mhm.
renewal, is if I love doing it and I think I'm adding value to the market, and it's, not as profitable as you would think it should be, how can I balance that in other areas
Mhm.
of the business? So maybe so this year we decided to outsource our regular Kiya Tomlin collection and take that overseas to give us a bigger profit margin so that we could kind of carry that over and share that with the NFL collection since that one
Mhm.
doesn't have as much. But it also, my kind of like proud moment, I guess, is the factory that we've built here in Pittsburgh, and our seamstresses are all Afghan refugee women. They don't speak any English. They actually came to me through a Christian health center that when they came over from Afghanistan after the big evacuation, they were working on some mental health, isolation, the lack of speaking languages. Many of them had little babies, and there's just a lot of depression and isolation. And they learned that these women sew and they like to sew. And so someone reached out to me and said, like, hey, I hear you sew. I have no idea what you do, but I've got these women. Maybe, we could talk and see what there is here. And so when I met with them in a translator, I assumed they, do you want my fabric scraps? Like, you want some old sewing machine? Like, I didn't know what they wanted. And after talking to them, they said, like, our husbands can work, we want to work. And so I was like, oh, what does that mean? You want me to, round up some people that you can sew for? And they said, no, like, we want to work for you. And it had always been my dream to have my own factory. And we did it in small scale. We did like little on-demand stuff, but to have a population of people that wanted to do it, because it is hard to find people that want to do that work. That gave me the inspiration to start a factory. And so I spent a year figuring out how to run a factory. And like I said, I've never worked in the fashion industry before. So it definitely was and still continues to be a learning experience. But to be able to employ these women that cannot speak English and would have very limited opportunity to work at a good wage doing something else on top of they have small children, babies. I give them flexible work hours. So if you want to work only while your child's in school, that's fine. If you want to put your baby to bed at 10 o'clock at night and come over and sew, you've got the code to get in and you can sew then. We even tried childcare in-house for a few months. That didn't quite work, but it was a good try. It was a good try. So to be able to support those women to the point where one was able to get a driver's license and buy a used car. Another one was able to, along with her husband, leave their Section 8 housing and buy a home of their own. Like that to me balances out like, yeah, the NFL collection's not overly profitable, but like that is the profit I enjoy right there is seeing that happen. So
Yeah. Oh
that's
my
kind of like
gosh.
expanding on that dream, I guess, is what I would like to do.
That's so good. So the entire NFL collection is still sewn in Pittsburgh by
Yes.
these women.
Yes.
Wow. And do you lead with that in your marketing and in your messaging? Because I feel like there's a whole sector of people
Yeah.
that would buy just for that.
I didn't, and I don't yet. And really, at first it was because, like, I didn't know how it was going to work. So I didn't want to bring too much attention to it if it was
Yeah.
all
And
going
then
to blow
it
up in my
failed.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, that'll be a bad look.
That'd be-
And then secondly, I am concerned about their safety and just there's, a lot of hate in the world. And so I'm very protective of them. We don't, advertise where we're located. We don't, there's no signage. The windows are tinted, it's very private. And so it was more of that as well. Um, now that we're, I'm seeing progress and I'm seeing like, okay, we can do it. We're managing. It's a good thing. And the ladies are okay with it. We do speak a little bit to it, but we haven't gone on a full scale like marketing. Because at the same time, I also feel a little like I don't want to exploit them and be like, hey.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very careful about that too. I mean, I'm proud to say we are made in America, which I do think a lot of people underestimate how hard and expensive it is to make in America.
I
Um,
agree with
Other countries are just so much better set up and equipped to do it logistically. And I was even shocked. And when I sent our fall winter collection overseas, and that was the first time I've ever manufactured overseas, the ease with which it was all handled was like, oh my gosh, I have a whole nother life now that I can like focus on something else. Whereas when you manufacture in America, you are doing absolutely everything. There is no system or tie that just like I give them my idea and whips it up and it happens. No, I'm like, I'm 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 at the mill knitting, just about knitting the fabric myself. Then I'm carrying to the cutting to the facility to cut it. Then I'm bundling it myself and I'm taking it somewhere else. And just logistically, we are not set up in America to do that anymore. And so it is very hard and very expensive. And so some people appreciate it. Some people appreciate it and are willing to pay for it. Some people appreciate it but are not willing to pay for it. So
Yeah,
that was a
it's such
lot.
a great thing that you're doing though. Like, and it is really cool. It's rare to have anything manufactured for that reason. It's extremely
Yeah.
difficult. So it's
Hmm.
like there has to be a little bit of that love and passion behind it. And it seems
Hmm.
like you have that passion for these women too, which is just remarkable. I want to make sure that everyone that's listening or watching us gets access to see, because I think you're wearing the sweatshirt. That's my favorite sweatshirt in your
Oh.
collection. Yes. And it's like a shorter, is
Yeah.
it?
It's a
Yes,
little
I love
crop.
that. Yeah, so
With the
cute. So where can everyone find you? Oh my gosh, look how cute. Where can they find you? Where can they find the line or both of the NFL collection and your other collection together? Where are they
Yes,
located?
so it's all on kiatomlin.us. And we have three little tabs. It's kind of designed after like Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy. You just kind of switch tabs. So it's the Kiya Tomlin collection, which is just our main brand. And I call it comfortable clothes for stylish women, to help them live authentic lives. And that's really the basis of the brand. Then we have the NFL collection, and you can shop by team. And then lastly, we have a Coach T collection, which is just
Oh,
t-shirt
awesome.
sayings.
Oh, okay. The sayings on the,
Yes.
okay, that's cool. That's cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. We will get that linked up everywhere. I'm just so excited to have met you. I'm just so excited for what you're bringing to the world, how you're honoring these women that you're working with, and just you wanting to like light your own path and just like plant your stance in the world that you're not just a mom, you're not just a wife, although those two titles are the biggest titles ever, but that you're really a kick-ass entrepreneur. And I think that it's phenomenal. And if there's anything I can ever do to help you just within your business, you have a free pass to reach out anytime. I'm happy to in any way, because I think what you're doing is really remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for helping me and, all of us other number challenged people with your book. It's brilliant.
Thanks again, Kiya. Thanks so much.
Thank you.